Welcome to Career Crossroads Uncorked, a series of member chats inspired by good drinks and current talent acquisition trends. Your hosts, Chris Hoyt and Jerry Crispin, break down today's recruiting headlines while reviewing a select beverage of choice with industry leaders and influencers. Join us for a drink and conversation.
All right, welcome everybody. This is a CXR special podcast. This segment is called Uncorked, and this is where we grab one of our favorite people in the space and sit down, typically with their drink of choice, if we can get a hold of it, and talk with them over that bottle or that glass or that mixer about what's going on in their world, what's hot in the space, what's top of mind. And so I'm excited that Jerry and I have a repeat guest. I think, Marcus, you've been on the show before, but you've not done an Uncorked with us, have you?
I have not, and I felt left out last time when I found out that wine could have been involved. So I had to insist that wine was involved the next time.
Yeah, well, it's a good call. So, Marcus, as we jump right in, why don't you give a little bit of an escalator pitch as to who you are and what you do and where you're seated?
Yeah, so my name is Marcus Thorpe. I am currently the global head of talent acquisition for Thorpe. We are now newly a public software consultancy, building bespoke software for big companies and clients, airlines and banks and retail companies that don't typically specialize in building their own software. And I've been here 4.5 years. I'm based out of my home office, which is what you see behind, in the Peak District, so the hills to the south east of Manchester in the UK. And living with my 3 kids, my wife, and 2 dogs at this point. And my shtick is tech recruiting. So I've worked for some of the bigger names within the tech space, building significant tech product, software engineering teams, etc. Kind of fell into it. I blame it on my dad. My dad was an electrical engineer, so I blame my ability to have some rapport with people of a logical bent on my dad. I've been at it for 25 odd years now. And there are always new challenges to solve for and scale to build and people to develop and grow and within this space. So it keeps me busy and interested, and I'm paid relatively well to buy this fine wine in front of me.
Well, and you are a little bit of you are a fan of the grape juice, right? Like you're a bit of a wine fan.
Yes.
I think the last time we saw you live was we were in Napa. Yeah,
that's right.
Sonoma, Napa.
Yeah, I've had to rebuild. When moving from the US to here, I couldn't really bring my wine. A couple of jobs I had, I actually persuaded them to break their reload policy by insisting my 200 bottles of wine moved from LA to Seattle and Seattle to the East Coast. But getting that transatlantic was probably too much, so I had to sort of give it away when I left New Jersey and start again. Funnily enough, there's lots of countries around here that allow me to do that, so it's not.
Look at Jerry's face.
I was around when you were giving that away. I just realized I was not within with that largesse. I hope you had some children or fine relatives as opposed to professional acquaintances that you gave that to. Otherwise, I'm going to be jealous.
To be completely fair, my colleagues didn't get any. Most of our things, including TVs, which don't ship to the UK because it's an entirely different system than it is in the US and North America, they all went to my brothers-in-law who live just across the border in Toronto.
I understand.
So I had to sneak it in. I had to hide the TV underneath suitcases and the wine sort of underneath a carpet or two, and then just wave nicely at the Canadian Border Patrol as I sort of basically smuggled it into southern Canada.
Okay.
So yeah, nothing personal. Apologies. It didn't stay in New Jersey.
I never took it personal. I just felt a loss.
Missed opportunity. So, Marcus, what did you pick for your drink of choice today?
So this is I chose this because it's I'm a huge advocate of Costco Wine, which may not necessarily follow, and there are other fine places you can buy wine as well. But Costco is the largest buyer of wine in the world as a company. There's a documentary, if you care to find it, about the lady who was a buyer at Costco with no prior wine experience, who has become their lead wine purchaser and had to go through various training, etc. But they do a really, really good job of variety of wine, mixing it up. It's not always the same ones each time. And also they do a really good job of sharing notes, so you don't have to guess what stuff is. And they'll pull the Robert Parker reviews or wherever the reviews are from to give people an indication of what we're talking about and some tasting notes, etc. So that's my precursor. But I went for something European, since I'm now over here and need to start selling for the when I bought it for the EU, which we're now no longer part of. But this is an Italian. It's a Chianti Classico. It's a Reserva, and Castello di Valpea. So it's big and meaty. 2015. It's probably only just starting to be drinkable, because it is a slightly older, longer lasting wine. But I've had one before. It was delicious, and when I thought, let's find something that we can get across the ocean, this seemed to be the one.
Very nice. Right.
That's good information about Costco. I am a member of Costco, but I've not used it in well over a year. I'm going to go to Costco and see what they've got from a wine point of view. That's good information. Thank you, Marcus.
It is. I haven't renewed my Costco membership since leaving California. I don't know why I haven't gotten around to doing it, but I do remember.
In Texas, right?
Isn't Sam's is different than Costco, right?
Yeah, but I'm saying it's sort of south of Wyoming, you start picking up more of a Sam's Club affinity rather than a Costco one.
Yeah, that's true. But I do remember them always having like the wine ratings, and there was always a nice variety, and then a couple of staples that you would always grab, the easy stuff. What I did learn is the liquor store for Costco does not require a Costco membership. You can just roll on up to a Costco liquor store, go right on in and buy whatever you want and roll on out of there without a card.
And depending on which state you're in, the liquor store may be part of Costco and it may be a different building adjunct to the Costco.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I just remember feeling really dejected. They were like, I was like, here's my card. He's like, we don't need your card. I'm like, well, shit, I bought that card halfway for the liquor.
So I have a couple cases of this, by the way. So this is a Chianti Classico Reserva. Veticio is the producer.
Very nice.
Wine Spectator puts it at 94.
Wow. Okay.
At less than $20.
Very nice.
And so I got, I said, as the regular drink that I might want to have during the course of a week or whatever, nothing particularly special, but good quality, and drinkable, goes down well. This is a lovely Chianti Classico Reserva. And for those who are into the Sangiovese grape, I think it's a good choice from my perspective.
I'm going to make a note of that because clearly your midweek drinking is at a higher quality than mine, and I need to up the ante a little bit. So I'm going to make a note of that.
So, Marcus, when you said that the Chianti is just drinkable, that it's one that ages, how would somebody who doesn't know any better avoid buying and drinking one that they should be buying and sort of sitting on for a while? You got to look that up, or
yeah, I mean that you cheat. I subscribe to Decanter, which is a European magazine online presence, which tends to test out sort of supermarket blends, for example, which we have a lot of in the UK and Europe, as well as everything else. You can look up what's the best non-vintage champagne for Christmas, that sort of thing. And then a couple more online ones, including Wine Spectator. I join them, and so if I ever have to go through a menu, I cheat and I look up, and I want to have somebody else say, this is a really good bottle of wine and it's okay for drinking between 2020 and 2027. And then I'm in the middle somewhere. So there's always information somewhere. Sometimes you have to pay a little bit for it. But Wine Searcher is a really good place that sort of collates. You won't get the notes, but you'll get all the scores. And there's a free version of Wine Searcher that'll give you the aggregated scores, the mean of all of them for anything that you're looking for. And then even tells you where you can purchase it afterwards. So yeah, I cheat. I read it somewhere else. I don't have that sort of knowledge. But you do tend to pick up eventually which years are good ones. So for Northern Italy, 2015 was a great year, and 2018 was a great year, for example. So nice. cheat with a little bit of knowledge on the side.
I think we all cheat a little bit as a starting point. And then when we drink the wine, if you don't need a Tums about 15 minutes after you've had the glass, you definitely know that it was a little bit more drinkable. There is some raw wine that when we go to conferences, for sure, that after the second glass of that red wine, you're going,
the conference lobby red wine, right?
I know, it just doesn't work. And that's when you know that you're not drinking the kind of wine that's going to, give you some kind of experience, if you will.
I use the Vivino app because I can take a picture of the label, and I think I have the paid version. It's like I don't know, $1.99 or something like that, and you can store your entire wine library in there, I think.
Well, we have on our camera the lens thing, and when you move from camera to this lens app on our camera, it basically looks at the picture of the bottle of wine that you're looking at, and then gives you actually links to reviews.
Yeah, I tried Vivino, but and I'll have to admit this, it's probably the inherent snob in myself. But if I'm going to have somebody else comment on a food or wine, I want it to be somebody that is a professional in that area, rather than somebody, I don't know who this person is, what their day job is, etc. They may have a wonderful palate, but I'd rather trust the professional to give me that advice than the well-meaning, probably quite capable individual that I have no knowledge about.
Well, you say that, and it's why anything on Vivino, we won't buy anything under a 4. So even a 3.9 will pass, but right. Over a 4 is typically where it's like, oh, this is pretty good. Maybe not our favorite, but it's not awful. But yeah, that's usually how we cheat.
Yeah, there's a Wine Spectator app, which is pretty good. You have to pay for that, and if you search, you don't always get every year of every vintage of every wine, but you'll normally get a picture if all of them with a slightly different choice of vineyards, but with the same brand and the same year is a 92. This one's not going to be a 80. Sure. So that one's I quite like the Wine Spectator one as well. Nice. But cheat, you have to cheat.
I don't know how you guys collect 200 bottles. I can't seem to hold on to them that long.
You just have to, it's like supply chain management. You have to make sure that you understand your time to deliver and plow through, and your production rates basically of consuming wine, and you have to match it with making sure that there's an inbound supply of happy van drivers with crates of wine to try.
And it's also your goal in life. If you want to invest in wine, that's a whole different thing. If you're young and engaged and have the money to do that. But I limit to about a little over 100 bottles, in part because I figure when I stop buying, I can probably still drink all the rest before the end. And I have no interest in leaving any bottles to my children. They don't drink wine. So my daughter likes beer, my son likes liquor. And why leave any of that shit for? So if I bought it for myself, I want to be able to drink it before before it's too late. So 100 bottles is pretty good. That's a good.
Yeah, there is my parents called me not long ago and they said, look, we're just getting all of our affairs in order. Should something happen, we want you to know that there's this and that that's left you. And they said, what would you like? I said, I don't want any of your stuff. I don't want any of your money. I want you to have such an enjoyable life that you roll into that coffin hot.
Yeah.
Like that, like you are so spent and done, and your last check, I want it to bounce. I want you to just spend everything that you did.
That is my favorite. My favorite line is that, the day you go, your last check bounces.
I'd like my coffin to be closed because that's just how hard I went up until the end. It's like nobody just remember him the other way. But yeah, all assets depleted.
Make good use of it. And I think wine is just an extraordinary way to be able to enjoy or experience breaking bread with your friends, your colleagues, your family, etc. So it's very enjoyable from that point of view.
So Marcus, when did you get into wine?
My parents have always loved wine, so it's probably part of why I was interested in it potentially. But I moved to San Francisco in 1998 at the age of 27, and my knowledge of wine prior to that was effectively zero. I would have been exposed to a couple of nice bottles and a nice dinner with my parents, but not much had sunk in. But having Napa on the doorstep, Sonoma on the doorstep, which I discovered later. Sadly, I wish I'd discovered Sonoma earlier.
Oh.
And then, even further south, you can go south of San Francisco and also find some great wine. Whenever it was a crappy day in San Francisco, which weren't uncommon, and we had nothing better to do, it was, hey, should we go to Napa? And,
quick drive.
Basically jump in the car, you're at the bottom end in about 40, 45 minutes. And then you can just spend, as much time as you like, going as far up as you like. You can even break. There's a Silverado trail in the back, and there's all kinds of, variations on the theme. And, this place, it looks interesting. We've been here before. And I have to admit, I used to have a bit of an underhand practice, which was I would join every wine club that we stopped at on the way up and on the way back down. And when you do that, you give them your card details, and you get your tastings for free, and your whole group gets tastings for free. And probably 3 or 4 times, having done this, every time I came back to the city, I would destroy my debit card and order a new one. Hadn't been stolen or anything. I just said it, just was needed replacing. So a month later, 6 weeks later, all of the wineries reached out to me and said, we've been trying to send you your first crate of wine, and we're unable to. Please fill in this form and send it back to us so we can make sure that you get your wine that you would like. And of course, eventually they got wise to that, and they sort of took a chunk of change out rather than just a promissory note saying, I'd like to buy some wine at some point in the future. I think they made it a little bit more safe and tight to stop people from doing that. So, yeah, I might have changed the policy for joining wine clubs in.
So I had never joined a wine club until my second time living in California, so a couple of years ago. And we rented a little place near the beach in Carmel for about 4 months, I guess a year ago, yeah. And there was a particular, on the walk down to the beach, we would pass this little wine shop for the Han Winery.
Okay.
And loved the staff at Han, loved it. I mean, we loved a couple there. Caraccioli was wonderful, but Han had this thing where, if you remember, anytime you stopped by, you got a free tasting. Well, I don't know that the dog has been walked so much as when we had free tastings every time we walked by the Han shop. So yeah, I think they appreciated seeing the dog more than they did us, because we'd swing by there, I think, almost every day and get a free tasting. And we still get the Han wine delivered out here in Texas now. It's great.
Yeah, because back in '98, a tasting was sort of $5, and you get 3 nice tastings for $5.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you don't go and you're not a member of the club, you're talking $20-25 sometimes for a tasting.
Oh, easy, if
nice
not more.
Yeah, it's more than that. Yeah.
Yeah, I belong to only 2 wine clubs. One is Antica, which is Antinori, and the other is Nickel and Nickel. And so that's basically it. Other than that, I look for modest priced wines that are drinkable. And I've learned to drink a lot more white wines in the last couple of years than ever before, and enjoying them immensely in relation to that.
So you've spent some time in Monterey, Marcus, yeah? There is a winery inland a little bit in the Monterey area called Odonata. And I think it used to be called Dragonfly, but then there were some rights or whatever. So Odonata is like another name for a translation of Dragonfly, and I forget. It's not Gaelic, it's something. Anyway, we rolled up on this place, and the guy is sort of introducing us around, and one of the guys that works the land comes over with a shovel, and he's chatting us up, and he leaves, and he says, well, that's the owner. And he couldn't have been 30 something. And I guess he's on to this. And the wine is fantastic. And we've been 4 or 5 times we've visited since joining. But you sit out there, it's this very, it's not pretentious. It's very, the sommelier that comes out is incredibly personal and just chats you up a little bit. And it's probably my second favorite vineyard that I visited the entire time that I was in California. So if you haven't been to it, the next time you're in the Bay Area, I would highly recommend Odonata.
Oh, how's it spelled? O-D?
O-D-A-N, Odonata, A-T-A? Yeah, I'll send it to you. And we have another shipment that's coming out, but they do these they have a really great model for how the wine selections work, and you can opt out of this. I mean, but the team there, I've never seen a more personal sort of team and conversation. And it's kind of a funny thing. Jerry and I were talking about this last year, in that and you'll have to tell if it's the same for you, but every wine club we've ever joined was because we felt like we belonged there when we were visiting. We weren't, somebody wasn't, put out to help us, and it wasn't a hassle. It felt like we were part of that family or part of that community. And that's how I ended up at Caratielli and Han and Scribe and, a couple of others. But that wasn't so much that the wine was through the roof necessarily each time, but that we felt like that was somewhere we were supposed to be. Is that, do you have the same discerning sort of selection?
Well, I mean, as I said, originally when I joined wine clubs, it was literally to be able to get the free wine as a person living with 4 other guys in a small house in San Francisco. Our rent paid for not very much else afterwards. So that's why I did it originally. But no, that's very much the case now. It's we don't have wineries around here. They do grow wine in the UK. So the wine clubs you can join, it's based on your affinity with how they deliver a message and the story they have to tell, and not selling too much. It's a fine line between being affable and, pleasant to talk to without every third word turning to the cost of this bottle sort of thing. So it's a fine line. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely a family feeling in a lot of these places have that sort of family vibe where, everybody behind the bar is a cousin or a sister of the owner. And that tends to make it better. It tends to make it a little bit more friendly and welcoming, rather than feeling, they're just eyeing you up to sort of see what color Amex card you have in your wallet, basically.
Well, and the product is sufficient that you don't need Tums after the first glass.
but that's the other thing we found is when you went to Napa and Sonoma, is that you had to stop buying after the sort of the 4th or 5th winery.
Oh yeah,
because your appreciation for what's good and not had completely disappeared. Oh, this is wonderful. Oh, this is amazing. And you sort of your standards definitely dropped a bit after
And
4 or 5
especially in Napa, you need not to be the one who's driving, because
Always get a driver.
the cost of getting pulled over in Napa is I think the highest in the country.
One of the first lessons I think I learned working with Jerry directly was when we would do the dinners and the little happy hours after the dinner, and we would always order a nice wine. But then you only had 2 or 3 people still hanging out at the end. And so we'd end up, let's get one more. Let's get a really nice bottle. And that's the opposite. You should go, because we could have been drinking a bottle of Josh towards the end of the evening and thought it was Jordan. Well, I don't have any Sonoma trips planned coming up, although now I kind of feel like I wish I did. Marcus, you've got some travel coming up. Are you hitting any wineries and vineyards?
Well, TBD. I'm going to be at Talent 42, assuming it's in person, and the plan will be to fly in and out of SFO, and then and then make my way up to Seattle for the sort of the week in between. Vanessa's already put her hand up to come and join me. So the hope will be that if we have 2 weekends, two full weekends there, that one of them will be wine related. Sort of either, we have a really good couple of friends who live in Marin. So they're already that extra sort of 25 minutes closer to Sonoma and Napa. So either staying there and heading up in an Uber for the day, or just spending the weekend up there. So that's sort of early plans are being sort of formulated in that direction.
I've seen I know Talent 42's up, but I haven't seen yet if ERE or SourceCon have any live. I don't think they have any live dates planned yet. Just the Talent 42.
I don't think.
Which are all the ERE family now, obviously.
Are we looking at Talent 42, Chris?
We're always looking at Talent 42, Jerry.
Yeah. Okay.
I haven't seen anything from it. I haven't gone to look specifically. I saw the dates that they were up, but I haven't looked if there's an agenda or speakers or anything published yet. But I do like that part of the country for sure. It does make for an awfully nice road trip up the coast. If
you go any time apart from June or July, Seattle's weather is much like it is outside the window right now. But in June and July, their summers are pretty spectacular. It's about as pleasant and dry and non-humid warmth you can probably find. So yeah, big fan of Seattle in the summer. Well, Marcus, let us know if you end up pulling the trigger on that. And then I think if Jerry and I are going to head out to 42 and anybody's up for a fun maybe road trip, maybe that would be an interesting thing to sort of take on. Yeah, I'll be flying up from the Bay Area to Seattle, but I'd happily drive that way and stop in a certain place in Oregon that we've already mentioned this evening, and Walla Walla and places like that. Yeah, that would be. I'm looking for an excuse to get a bus.
Marcus, you would be a candidate for this, but one of my fantasies is to go back to the laundry.
Oh, the French Laundry.
The French Laundry. There's a whole host of issues about how you get into the French Laundry, but there is an exception. And the exception is there is one outdoor table at the French Laundry that's for 10 people.
Okay.
And you can call to try to find a date for that anytime. You do not have to compete for that table. And so my fantasy would be to find 10 folks who would be willing on a given date to fly in for that experience.
I mean, I think I'd love to put my hand up there. I have to admit, I have eaten at the French Laundry.
I have too.
It was the year it was either 1999 or 2000. So shortly after I moved to San Francisco, and my parents came to visit, and I managed to I was on the phone, as you have to do 3 months before.
Yes. 3 months before, right?
And you call, and I got through, and I got a table, and the only table was the last sitting of the day. We didn't care. We're sort of European, so that wasn't a major problem. And so I took my parents, this is 20-year-old me.
Fabulous. Unbelievable.
To French Laundry by way of sort of saying, thanks for everything. 7 years of boarding school and university and various extra costs they weren't expecting on top of that. And sort of my way of saying thanks, and it was extraordinary. And then my parents insisted they pay for the wine, so I paid for the food, and then they bought the wine, as sort of a reciprocatory thank you very much as well. And it was, as you expect, wonderful. And the best thing was, is because we were the last table of the day, they came back with a second set of desserts for us because they had a couple extra left.
That sounds like a strategy to me.
I think it is a strategy. I used a concierge service. They called and said, no, we could not get you a time, but you're on the waiting list. And then 2 days before we actually left for Napa, I got a call, and they said, hi, this is so-and-so from the French Laundry. You're on the waiting list, and we've had a cancellation of 4 people. Would you be interested? And I said, yes. And they said, but here's the conditions. You can only have 4 people. You can't have more, and you can't have less. And I said, okay, 4 it is. And they go, and it would be okay. You're going to be able to pay half of that now. And there is no, you don't get it back.
I want to know though, what happens if you show up with 3? I get 5 and they say,
I don't know.
Have that.
I don't know.
But 3, do they turn the whole party away and keep half?
I don't know. They are pretty. You're going to pay for 4. You're going to pay for
some
4
boxes to take home, is what I hear you say.
No, I think you're going to pay for 4 and you're going to get 3.
I'm paying for 4. I'm getting 4.
I hear you. Then you're going to have to sit in 2 seats. But the time frame that they ask you to show up is so that they can greet you individually.
Oh, so you don't see the other
That
guys.
is the purpose. There's not 20 people showing up at 5:00. No. You're showing up at 5:25 or 7 whatever or whatever it is. And when you show up, they know who you are because that you're the only people showing up at that time is you.
And I have to say that was the most amazing thing about the French Laundry was the service was in no way pretentious whatsoever. It was completely sort of laissez-faire. You didn't see someone lingering like you sometimes get.
I didn't see anybody around me.
Exactly, but every time you finish something, sort of lost in thought and enjoying the wine or whatever you're chatting about, something's whisked away and something new arrives. You just don't see them. It's brilliant. It's amazing.
I can't overstate this, but you'd have 10 courses, and after each course, the maitre d' whatever came to kind of debrief you about the course that you just had, that they had explained in detail how it was going to be delivered and all of that kind of stuff. So as he's debriefing you, you suddenly look down and everything that you had in front of you was disappeared. Somehow some elves had come and taken all the shit off the table.
Food elves? Did you have food elves?
Bobby's dinner.
And then when you looked again, it was all reset for the next stage. And I'm going, how the fuck did they do this? Unbelievable. So yes, it was the ambiance was pretty extraordinary, very different than anything I'd experienced before. And so yes, it was well worth the kind of show, as well as the food itself.
I'd love to go again as not quite such an impecunious 28, 29-year-old and sort of see how it's changed in my view. Sign me up. If you're going the week before Talent 42, I'd love to be part of that. That'll be
we'll make a consideration here. It's got possibilities. If we can suck 10 people into doing this and showing up, at a given time, given date, whatever, it would be pretty interesting conversation for sure.
Well, we're putting the calendar together, so.
By the way, I know of a couple of other British talent acquisition leaders who I've worked with previously who now live in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Who I've been trying to sort of push in the direction that this is something you should be doing. One's still at Google, which makes it difficult. One's left Facebook. Facebook are probably never going to be part of it. But I've been trying to push in this direction. So there are potential future clients now that they're sort of moving on from their big monolithic companies. So and they're both very interesting folks for an interesting alcoholic dinner of some description.
Okay, all right. It sounds like as we're putting the calendar together,
sounds like an opportunity as we put our calendar together for sure.
All right. So look, let's wrap this way, and I want to give a for anybody who may or may not be listening. It's Odonata. So it's Odonata. It occurred to me as we were talking about it, and I think the website is like odonatawines.com or something like that, but it's Odonata. But okay. my lazy lips say Odonata. Anyway, but so taking us out of this, give us both of you, because you're both big wine aficionados. Give us one takeaway for somebody trying to figure out what kind of wine they like, how they should start, or where they should look. So Marcus, we'll start with you. I'm just figuring out wine. What should I do to figure out what I like?
I'll be honest. Ask. You're not going to do, we talked about cheating because that's the stage we're at. But when you start, don't be shy about going into a wine shop. I wouldn't go into Safeway, but go into a nice wine shop. K&L Wines in SF, brilliant wine shop. Don't know if you've been there, but it's outstanding. They deliver all over the US. I use them always for sending wines around the place, even today. Go in a place like that. Be honest about what you like and what you don't like. I hate woody Chardonnay. Okay, we'll stay away from that. Do you like it fruity or do you like apple sort of taste? Okay, that'll direct you in a different way. I think that's the best way to learn, is to be a little bit modest and vulnerable potentially, and trust the person who, frankly, their job is to get you to like enough of the stuff that they can give you or sell you to the point where you come back and ask for more. So it's absolutely in their jobs to do it. They're not tied to one winery like they would be up in Sonoma or Napa or elsewhere. And you can probably build a friendship over time with, come back and say, I like this, but it was a bit too many tannins or something about it. That's honestly how I recommend it. I'm not the best example of this because I do tend to lean heavily to red. I love a rosé when it's a super hot day. I don't drink much white wine, but I still enjoy it when I get it. So I'm definitely biased towards the red. But the other recommendation would be, don't not try something because you think you've heard something about it. Take the recommendations, even if it's something that you think you don't historically like. You probably had a bad bottle of $2 Chuck, and the $20 Chuck is a lot better than the $2 Chuck. So that'd be my recommendation.
Nice. I love it. And Jerry, how about you?
When I started to get involved in wine, I was over 50 years old. And it came because of a variety of different kinds of things. But someone had said, stop doing this and start having a glass of wine a day, and you're going to be a lot better off. And I knew very little about wine. And so I did exactly what Marcus reflected on. And it wasn't so much going to a wine store or a store and saying, hey, what could you give me to try it? But I had friends who, by and large, were willing to introduce me, people who I knew liked wine. And folks like Master, for example, introduced me to some wine that I go, holy shit. That's not anything I've had before. So it's the opportunity to tell people who actually like wine, who might be in your network, to give you something that they like so that you can go, I like this, or no, it's not, I can't get it. And quickly you're gonna start having exactly what Marcus said, which is, I'd like something a little sweeter. I'd like something not so sweet. I would like something that I taste the fruit, or I'd like something different than what I have now. So when I go to a restaurant, for example, I tell them I like Italian wines that are blends, that I like red wines, but I'm happy to try, a variety of things. And I like fruit forward, and I like something that is less than this cost.
Right.
Otherwise, they're going to tell you, oh, here's something much more expensive than you're willing to do. So I'm very clear on the price. And I offer this as a very important thing, is you need to tell them what you're comfortable paying for. If, I'm comfortable paying $100 for a bottle of wine at a restaurant, that would cost $50 if I went into a store. I'm not comfortable paying $250 for a bottle of wine. So to be honest about that and say, look, I'd like a bottle of wine that you think is the best that you can offer at $70. And they'll give you something relative to that. If you really want to go to a restaurant and buy something that's $20, you're still going to get, $2 chuck, because that's what they charge for $2 chuck.
Yeah, but you can wash it down nicely with your catfish. It would be great.
Yeah. Well, whatever you're going to eat.
And you can clean your pennies in it as well.
There's that.
Yeah, just add a little Coke.
Exactly. What's that? Calimocho, right? That's what the Spanish call it. Crappy red wine and Coke, Calimocho.
Oh, that makes me sick at my stomach just thinking about it. Not great. All right. Well, Marcus, as always, thank you so much for giving us some time. We really appreciate your insight. Fun conversation about wine. We didn't talk a whole hell of a lot about anything, TA, but that's okay.
Okay, we have plenty of time to do that in the future.
For sure. And maybe even in a bus ride all the way up the coast.
Perfect. And if you feel so inclined as COVID allows in the coming year, I'm happy to find another bottle of wine and do this again. So just let me know. This is fun.
That sounds like a deal.
Look forward to it.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Career Crossroads Uncorked. Chris Hoyt and Jerry Crispin look forward to sharing more drinks and conversation with you next time. Until then, cheers.